So
That's a
is there
great.
in any traditions, is there demons who could be like cool roommates, or are they always like a bit of a downer
No,
to hang
it
out
seems
with?
if you look at the literature, most of them seem like they're, some of them are pretty bad, some of them are pretty evil, but most of them seem relatively easygoing. They
Interesting.
can teach you ethics and rhetoric. They can teach you how to
Really?
find buried. Oh yeah, they can teach you how to find buried treasure, get a girlfriend. And again, this is part of the Christian mythology about demons, right? Is that demons used to be angels, and because they used to be angels, God farms out as like work proletariat workers, right? All of the jobs in the universe, the angels. God doesn't do everything. God's like the boss of the universe. So the angels get all the jobs. And because the angels get all the jobs, they're responsible for controlling the weather or making gold or controlling, love and things like this. So the angels get all the jobs. And many of the angels that were in heaven, according to Christian mythology, well, some of them rebelled against God and were thrown out. Well, just because they were thrown out doesn't mean they've forgotten all the stuff that they knew. They still know all of that stuff, and also they're really old. They've been here since the beginning of the world, and so they know a lot about the world and how the world works, and they've seen the Roman Empire come and go, and so they know everything about sort of the ins and outs of history at some level. And so they're extremely knowledgeable, and they're extremely like well versed in the functioning of the universe. And so in many ways, part of what summoning demons is kind of hacking the universe. You're summoning a fallen angel who's an expert at blah 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 blah, and then you're basically using divine names to bind that demon to get them to do stuff for you. So it's a bit like capturing a wild animal and then using that wild animal, forcing that wild animal to do X, Y, and Z. And so, yeah, these demons allegedly are quite good at a huge range of things. And we have historically demonological catalogs that tell you the name of the demon, how to summon them, what holy name will bind them, and what they're good at, what they can do and what they can't do. And so we have pretty extensive literature from history telling you, what these demons do. And, if you want to find buried treasure, there's a demon for that. If you want to learn languages, there's a demon for that. If you want to control the weather, there's a demon for that. And so it's a bit like it's a bit like a phone directory, as much as those used to exist, where you look up a demon and you call them and you use magical powers to control them, and you get what you want. So now, to be clear, St. Augustine makes the argument that I find actually very interesting, that most of these demons can't do the things that they say they can do. They can only create illusions, and that the demons are all engaged in a long con. They make you believe that you can summon them and then bind them and make them do stuff. And they might do things for you, but ultimately they're only doing that because they're really in control and they're conning you. And ultimately what they're trying to do is doom your soul to hell. And so Augustine has the argument that yeah, you think you're controlling them, but at the end of the day, they're older and smarter and wiser than you, and that they're in fact conning you. And again, the same way that you think you might be making a deal with the Russian mafia, you're not making a deal with the Russian mafia. The mafia is making a deal with you. And at the end of the day, you're not in control of the situation. When you go into debt to the mob, you never get out. And in the same way that when you go into debt with a demon, you never get out. You are the mark at the table. The old saying, right? If you don't know who the sucker at the table is, it's you. You're always a sucker at the table when it comes to demons, according to Augustine. And I think again, if you look at the history of these entities, that has to be true. I mean, it just seems obvious to me. Like I said, in the same way that I'm not going to take a loan out from Vladimir, with all the tattoos on his knees and stuff. I'm not going to take a deal with a ancient malevolent deity, quasi deity.
So people compiling these Rolodexes with like demonic entities, were they just inventing stuff out of whole cloth? Because I don't remember hearing about any of this stuff from our local priest when I was going to, Sunday school. Now he was drinking a lot, and that was his favorite like pastime activity. But even so, like I don't remember any of this kind of like armies of demons, fallen angels that you can trap with magic and that sort of stuff. It just didn't feature prominently in our catechism. So where is this
Yeah,
stuff coming from?
I think it would probably be in the best interest of the Catholic Church, given that they're hemorrhaging believers, to focus more on this stuff, because I think at least would hold people's attention more than the homoousios or whatever it is that that they're selling. So the traditions go back really far. There are demonological catalogs that go all the way back before the Common Era, before the birth of Jesus. There were Jewish demonological catalogs that go back to things like the Book of Enoch and maybe even prior to that. So yeah, this literature goes back a couple thousand years at least, maybe probably more. And what you see primarily is that there's an interest in early Judaism, and this is around the turn of the Common Era, a couple centuries before the Common Era. As you can easily imagine, things have not always gone well for the Jewish people. And insofar as things have not gone well for the Jewish people, one of the things that the Jewish people have asked is like, why is the world so bad? Why is life so terrible? And one of the answers has been, well, demons. Like the world's just populated with evil. In fact, the
Oh, that's
Talmud says
convenient.
that
Yeah.
it's a good explanation for why the world's so bad. It's just full of demons. In fact, the Talmud even says that that if you could see demons, that's all you would see. There's so many demons that if you could see them, you wouldn't see anything else. They're so ubiquitous. The world is a pandemonium. In fact, that literally means full of demons. The word was invented by John Milton for Paradise Lost. But the idea is that there must be something responsible for all this evil. And obviously, evil comes in lots of flavors. There's all kinds of evil in the world. There's war and disease and greed, and there's lust, and there's all kinds of evil. And so, one of the ways that they thought to deal with this problem was by assigning basically some kind of malevolent entity to all the various flavors and species of evil in the world. And so many of the demons actually end up with names of the particular evil, right? The particular evil attached to a divine name. So you might get a demon like that's a good example of a demon, Samael. Samael is sort of the closest thing in Judaism to the devil, and Samael means the poison of God. It's like it's a pretty metal. I mean, literally, there's a band called Samael, and so like you get all these demonic beings because basically you need somebody to explain the forces of evil. Of course, the angels do the opposite job, right? You get Raphael, God heals, and so the opposite of God healing people must be God poisoning people, and so Samael, the God's poisoner. Or the Malach Mashchit in Hebrew, the destroying angel, the angel of death. So that's kind of where you get. And so it's not hard to imagine that the world's populated by a bunch of evil beings, and that's why evil exists in the world, or at least how evil happens. And ultimately, what ends up happening is, well, if God is ultimately in control and God made all these beings, and we're on the side of God, perhaps it's the case that we can use God indirectly to bind these demons to get them to do stuff for us. In the same way that we can capture a wild horse, break that horse, and then make that horse carry chariots around or whatever. And so there is a logic here. It is not completely crazy that you can bind demons and make them do things. Evil clearly exists in the world, and you can also manipulate evil, and you can use evil to the interest of the good. Now, of course, this was never a widespread acceptable practice. You can't do bad things in order to do good things. But sure, I mean, there's definitely necromancers in the Middle Ages that would say things like, yeah, I use demons to find buried treasure, but then I also give some of the money to the church. um, and of course, the church is not going to be super about that. But I suspect that if you showed up to a church with a bunch of gold, they're not going to ask a lot of questions about exactly where it came from. And to your point earlier about your drunken priest, in the Middle Ages, there's only one group of people who can read books, who can get books, who can do rituals, who can do stuff in Latin, who know all this theology and philosophy that allows them to do this. There's only one group of people in the Middle Ages with those kinds of skills. It's priests. And we know now that, Olaf the farmer is not going to be able to recite a bunch of weird stuff in Latin to summon a demon. The only people capable of doing that kind of stuff, the only people with access to books and literature, was the priestly class.
Hey, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. This podcast has no sponsors, no production team, and no editors. It's just little old me. And as such, I'm at the mercy of you lovely folks watching and listening. So please do subscribe on YouTube. Click that little bell thing. Follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, I don't want to sell you an ugly t-shirt that you don't really need. So if you can, and most of all, if you want, please support me on Patreon. And at this point, I have to express my eternal gratitude to my patrons on Patreon, aka the producers of this show. As always, without you comrades, this podcast simply wouldn't exist. So massive, massive thank you to Ole, Marin Ferrara, Aljaž, Štrole, Aida, Mancian, Miha Medved, Medinho, Goran, Gordon, Lorenzo, Jurečuk, Mila, Carmen, Veronica, and Taichi. You guys are the best.